Okay, welcome back to the Sportster problem. It's around about the 15th of the 7th 2015. Previous Sportster problem, I tried a new CDI unit. Just about the complete ignition problem, the ignition system is replaced now. The only component on the ignition system that's not working, because I know the generator's working, or I should say that the generator's not replaced, but just about everything else is. The only thing to test really is the map sensor, or the inlet pressure sensor. So I'll be testing that this morning, and this applies to all my videos. I'm not a mechanic, I'm not a auto electrician, I'm just somebody that grew up with motorbikes as a kid. I've had 30 years break from motorbikes, and at this point I'm just trying to get back into bikes. Okay, so this is the work for this video. The work I'll be doing in this video is to take the petcock off, just make sure it's all clean and working properly. Make sure there's no dirt in the fuel tank. The fuel tank's been flushed a number of times during this saga of videos. I'll be adjusting the valves. I'll swap out the spark plugs. I'll put different spark plugs in. What have we got here? We've got car spark plugs here, and I've also got the original spark plugs, so we'll be swapping them out. I should really be doing a compression test on this bike. I don't have a compression tester yet, so I can't do that in this video. I'll be looking for a check engine light. It should appear on the tacho, I think. But I noticed that no check engine light comes on, so that could be a clue that it's a fuel system. It's unusual that I've got spark and fuel, so this isn't an easy problem to diagnose. And this is a mid-90s bike. There's a lot of extra componentry that they didn't have in the 80s, early 80s. If it was a point system, I would have been riding this bike for the previous year and a half, but it's just so complicated. Okay, so moving on. I've said before about the map sensor. We'll be testing running an ohms meter across the map sensor. The ohms reading is 1 ohm. So it says here, check for short to ground, measure the resistance between terminal 1 in map sensor connector and chassis ground. Is resistance greater than 1 mega ohm, 1 ohm. So the work I do here is with Climber manuals, and that's for an XLH Sportster 86 to 2003. In a previous video we saw that there was air bubbles coming through here after running the bike, so that could be a clue. There was a time when I did get this bike started, and it was when I moved this timing plate here. Now, after I found that I moved the timing plate and the bike started, I thought the bike was fixed, and I went through all the previous videos and I put on the heading so that people that came across the videos would know what the problem was. I put on the heading of the videos that it was bad timing. Well, that's not 100% correct. It did fix the bike, but the bike then broke down again, and I'm back to sort of the drawing board. So what I'll be doing in the future is I'll be going through all the videos, and I'll be putting in the actual cause, the fundamental cause of the problem. So that could be why you find that the headings will change on the videos. While we're at it, Sportster Problem 3 was edited. A fair amount of film was edited out of that. That's got to do with a misdiagnosis of the generator here, and where the actual connection is, where you do the ohms test. A fair amount of that was edited out, so it's a bit confusing about the first purchase of the CDI unit. test of that when the lights shut down and the electrical system shut down. So just bear that in mind. But a summary of that, it was I got the CDI, I plugged it in, hit the starter switch, and it all shut down. That's because that CDI, which is over here, it probably runs on different amperage. So that's the new purchased one, and that works fine. Okay, so this is spotlessly clean. I'm seeing a fair amount of dirt in the petcock. I've just taken the petcock off. You see there was a fair amount of fuel in the tank, enough to make the bike run properly. Okay, so that's the petcock after I've just taken it out. Looks a bit more clear than I thought, but you can see some grime around the bottom there. And remember, there was air coming through the line when the bike was started. Okay, so a blow through test. Yeah, seems okay. So the fuel looks good and clean. So there's the residue there, and it looks fairly clean. Okay, I found that the petcock's good. The only thing wrong with the petcock is that the outlet is facing the wrong way. It should be on this side here, so it just drops down into the carburetor. Okay, so this is on the off position. I can't blow through it. I'll put it onto the on position. So it's like breathing through a snorkel, so that's good. And now on the reserve position. It's a bit easier to blow through, so that's all good. In previous videos I've taken apart the carburetor, and you know, I've soaked it and blown high pressure through it all, so the carby's all good. The fuel system is perfect. One thing I notice is that this is completely loose. That's the way it was, and you know, that's just completely loose. In fact, oh yeah, it is binding on the thread. It's starting to seat down now at that height there, but it was up there, and that's completely loose. I didn't notice any petrol dripping. That's not to say there wasn't any petrol dripping, but you certainly expect petrol to get through there if that's not tightened up. So there's just this very thin rubber gasket. It does have a valley in it, but it seems like it'll still do the job. So that'll sit about midway in the adjusting nut there. Yeah, so this is the adjusting nut, so obviously it's going to be loose on this thread here. It only tightens it up when you tighten the assembly up to the tank, so that's also good. I've only got pink Teflon tape, so this is it. Nice reverse thread for this adjusting nut here. Okay, so I've dug up some white Teflon tape. This stuff's the white stuff's thinner, so I'll be putting more of it on. You don't want to get any of this stuff in your fuel system, especially if you've got a fuel injected bike. Just keep it well out of the way of the inlet there, and I'll be removing any strands back and out of the way. I won't be using a filter. I'll try and rig up a filter on the outside of the bike somehow, but this is really just for the test, so it'll do for now. I'll also mount it so that this outlet faces the carburetor and goes into the carburetor properly. Whoops, reverse thread, anti-clockwise. Oops, no, that's it there. Okay, so for my own reference, I've got off toward the outlet, on, and reserve is forward. So this has been turned around the opposite way because the carburetor's here. So before I put on the tank, what I'll do is test the inlet pressure sensor here. That's it here. Okay, so this bike uses the VOES system. So yeah, it's a VOES system, not a map sensor. Yeah, so that's it there. So I've undone the plug and I've got to find a terminal to test for the ohms. Okay, so that's that just slots into there. Okay, so the way to test this is with ohms readings. So you got your VOES system here. You got the two the circuit there. You just plug the multimeter into the join there, and you suck back on it, and you'll get the ohms reading, and we'll see that it's good. Just do that test again. Okay, so I've got the lead connected to the carburetor. The VOES is removed. I'm just going to plug that up and we'll see. I'll try and start it up and see what happens. Put that in there. Okay, so we can see the petrol tank's almost full. Right, so now we're going to do a test start up. The petrol tank is full. It's connected to the carburetor. And the VOES system is blocked off. So we'll go for a start and see what happens. Alright, so turn on the fuel. And I can't turn on the fuel there because it's seating against the carburetor. Okay, so I'll put the back of the tank up on the bolt, and quite frankly I think it sits more level anyway, you know. So I'll go ahead and turn the petrol on, I mean. Okay, so the first thing I see is that there's no fuel in the fuel line. There seems to be fuel at the bottom here, but no fuel coming through, and the petcock is turned on. Okay, so that's the fuel line, and we see that there's fuel at this level here. Okay, I'll reconnect it. Okay, so I've got a clear hose going into a container here. Okay, so the fuel level is just there. I'll connect the hose up. So now I'll turn it on, and nothing. No fuel flow through to the carburetor. I'll put it on to reserve. No fuel flow. Okay, just a note on that, with this motorbike the engine has to be running to draw fuel into the carburetor. So we're back to the carburetor. I'll be taking the carburetor off and looking into why it won't let fuel in. Okay, so that's it for this video, and stay tuned.